Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome. Come on in. So excited this Wednesday morning. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Put in the chat. Where are you from? What state are you in right now?
So excited to see people joining. We have a lot to talk about today, so I'm really excited about it.
We'll get started as promptly as we can. So come on in. Hello, folks. Come on in. What state are you from? Oh, from Las Vegas. Very cool.
Ooh.
Very cool. Nice to see you, Gonzalo. Hello, hello. Hello, welcome. Let's make this interactive, Gonzalo. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. I'm going to go through that in a moment. But there's more of you on. So where else are you guys from? What other states? Let's get those fingers moving. Put it in the chat. Where else? All right. Since it's noon, Dori, are we ready to go? Give me a thumbs up.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to put my timer on so I can be mindful of time. So welcome, welcome, everybody. I know a few more people will be rolling in. We are recording this, so we will send out the replay once we have it all set up. We're going to put it on our YouTube channels, and we will be sending this out. So fear not. Please, a couple of housekeeping things. Let's take some notes. Let's get our fingers moving and go into the chat. We're going to ask you some questions throughout. If you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A so Dori and I can answer those for you. Stay on until the end because Dori and I have a special offer that we put together for each of you. So this workshop is called Bridging the Gap Between Sales and Service. Put it in the chat. How many of you struggle to communicate between sales and service? Just say, yep, that's me. Yes, yes, yes. Put it in the chat. Let's get those fingers going because we are going to be giving you guys some strategies today. So get your notepads out, get your tablets out. We're going to talk about two key strategies that Dori and I have both used to really create collaboration and better communication so we can win more business. So
And we want to, oh, sorry, Lisa, I was just going to say, we want to hear from you, whether you're sales and maybe frustrated with technical and maybe frustrated with sales, or maybe you have a great team approach already and just want to hear some more tricks of the trade. So we're happy to have you here today.
Absolutely. So let's introduce ourselves, Dori. So I'm Lisa Shorr. I am the founder of Shorr Success. I'm also an MSP owner. I have my husband Eric and I co-own Secure Future Tech Solutions. I've been around in the MSP space for 25 years. And so as a coach, as a business coach now, and an image professional, I'm an author of the book called Your Brand Unleashed. We have a lot to talk about in terms of the human side of your business and of growing your MSP. I'm going to hand it over to Dori. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. As Lisa said, I'm Dori Spade. I have 17 years in the MSP space, over which time I worked for 3 different MSPs, helping them to solve a lot of their challenges, from MSPs from the $8 million range to over $100 million in revenue. And last year in early 2023, we exited our MSP, but I was really still, which was exciting, right? But I was still very much passionate about the industry and really fueled about a lot of the successes that I had had. So I decided to start my consulting company, Call to Action. And today I help business leaders, CEOs, service leaders in the MSP industry to be able to reach their goals. And we do this through both individual coaching as well as comprehensive programs that include areas such as AI compliance, cyber, preparing your organization for acquisition, and of course, service delivery excellence, which is where we're going to focus. My focus will be today.
I love it. I love it. Dori and I complement each other beautifully, which is why we're partnering today. So Dori and I are going to share a couple of stories. So Shorr's success became Shorr's success because of a very painful story. So several years ago, and think about this for everybody on the call today, can you relate? Have you ever been fired? My MSP was fired several years ago. We were working with a car dealership company, and we were called into their office. We thought we were going to review a service project that we were doing. We thought we were going to, have like a quarterly business review meeting. The reality was they wanted to fire us. And so we had the benefit of an exit interview. And when we asked why, what happened, they said, every time I call, your team acts as if they have no idea who I am. So Eric and I had a conversation about this and said, every time they call, usually, you think about, oh, it's a service issue or it's a pricing issue. Those are the reasons that we tell ourselves. It wasn't our phone skills, our client experience. But this was a classic case of sales not communicating to service what was needed, the nuances of each client, the personalities of each client. So the experience was inconsistent. So I took that strife, and I'm hoping all of you feel my pain. Think about your churn number. Churn is real and really happens. And so I took this and turned it into a business. I turned around my MSP. I started with all of the different soft skills and phone skills, and I'm going to share with you today 2 key areas. So remember, get your pen and paper going, get those questions going of how we turned our MSP around. We doubled our top line, but more importantly, we grew our profitability more than 100%. And that was a critical number because that's where your sanity lies. You've got your top line for vanity and you've got your bottom line for sanity. And so let's talk about that. So think about that story of being fired and think about some of the stories and struggles you have in your MSP. Dori, why don't you share a story as well?
Sure, absolutely. And I could certainly resonate with your story, Lisa, being in that position myself. But for me, my journey took me in 2015 after I had been with a boutique MSP that primarily specialized in the venture capital and private equity space. And I had been with them for 8 years. But then we were acquired by a very large national MSP that was growing gangbusters through acquisition. And I had the opportunity to run service delivery for the second largest region in the country, which was really exciting. And with that, I was responsible to help integrate 3 acquisition teams. I was, of course, accountable for revenue, growth, profitability, client satisfaction, and staff retention. So picture this, I'm very excited about this role and about this new organization. And every day texts are coming into my office and with utter frustration saying that there's no collaboration with sales. They're being given projects that they feel are being misscoped. Things are going sideways. We have new business onboardings that are waiting weeks and weeks to be completed, which of course is taking a toll on revenue as well. And the sales was equally as frustrated, as you can imagine, because they were promising things to customers that we weren't able to deliver on. And customers were upset, which was making it harder for them to go out and get new business. And so we knew that we had to really develop new processes that found a way forward with collaboration between the teams. So fast forward to my last MSP, where I was brought in to build the New England region and to be a part of the executive leadership team. So I found myself in a similar situation, but I was really able to scale up much more quickly at this point. And the results were really, really astounding, because at the end of the day, we were able to increase our sales win ratios from the industry average of around 25 to 30% to 70% consistently, even when we were talking about working through RFPs. So I'm really excited to share some of those success stories today and how we used a really solid framework and scalable, repeatable processes to get there.
So let's kick in. What do think about that, everybody? Can you imagine a 70% win ratio from contract to close? That takes collaboration, that takes communication. So here's our agenda for today. Let's kick right in. We've got 40 minutes to talk to you, so let's make it the best time spent. We're going to identify causes of silos. I think it's really important for us to take that step back, right, Dori, to kind
Absolutely.
of identify those areas so we can have a starting point and that framework to work with. Then Dori's going to kick in and talk about the process side. What are some of the key processes and templates needed so that sales and service can collaborate and have that opportunity to work together? And then I'm going to focus on key behaviors, because you can have all of the processes and templates, but if you're not speaking to each other respectfully and really thinking about some of the nonverbal communication, then it's all for naught. And we want our teams to be client ready. So this is the toughest thing, huh, Dori?
Yes, I mean, from my experience working with MSPs and working with clients today, the feedback that I've gotten is the two toughest things are being able to win new business and to retain clients. And I think you agree with that as well from an MSP owner perspective.
From an owner's perspective, I couldn't agree more. And really just thinking back on, how hard it is to win a client and how hard it is to win back trust and really build that rapport. This is what keeps me up every day. This is why we're here.
And we want to also ask the folks that are joining us today, what keeps them up at night? Do they agree that these are the two key ones, or do they have other ones that they'd like to share with us?
Yeah,
so put in the chat if you have, any comments or things that you would like to hear today. Maybe we can integrate those into our conversation.
Put that in the chat. Get your fingers moving. I'd love to know, do you agree that winning new business or retaining clients keeps you up at night? Maybe there's something else. Maybe is it data backup?
Staffing can be a common concern as well. I'm sure
staffing,
feeling that.
We'd love to see it in the chat. So, there's some metrics and some channel metrics we should be talking about also that impact when sales and service do collaborate. A lot of these metrics can really be improved.
Yes, and we talked about going from an industry average of close ratio for new businesses. So what does the channel say about these metrics? The average from qualified lead to close of new business is in the 20 to 30% range. And from proposal to winning new business is a tick higher to about 25 to 35%. So picture if you are at the proposal state with 10 different prospects over the course of several months or a year, if you're a smaller MSP, whatever it is, and you win 3 of those versus getting to a 70% close ratio where out of 10 proposals that you're delivering, you win 7 new clients. So it's a huge impact. Not only that, once you have new clients, of course, you want to continually expand and grow those. According to the channel, average metrics for project revenue brings in about 10 to 15% of your monthly MRR. Why is that important? Well, a lot of people like, it's all about MRR. We don't care about the non-recurring revenue, but in fact, that revenue can be very, very important for a couple of different reasons. One is that it's great for cash flow, right? You know that you're bringing in that revenue every month very consistently. Another reason is that projects can build a closer rapport with your clients. So you want to make sure that they're successful and that you're doing them all, within the timeline that they need you to do them in. And so we were able to grow our project revenue, including some MRR expansion services, from the average of about 10 to 15% to very consistently 20, 25, and sometimes 30% of MRR per month, using a lot of the methodologies and the framework that we put in place. And Lisa, as a business owner, I think something near and dear to your heart is about the lifetime value of a client.
Oh boy, is it ever. So thinking back to the car dealership that we lost. So at the time, so this is several years ago, but at the time they were paying us over 10,000 a year. They were probably at 12,000 a year in revenue times, they were a client for 10 years. So here's the painful part is they were expanding to a new dealership that we lost that revenue of servicing them. So I want everybody on the call today and everybody listening to this replay, what is your average MRR for your client? I want you to think about the lifetime value of this client and why having a framework and really honing in on the client experience and some of those soft skills we're talking about today is so important. So say your average MRR is 3,000 a month, and say your average contract is 3 years. That's $108,000 that of just MRR revenue to your IT business.
It's a big number, Lisa.
That's a huge number, right? It's a huge number in just 3 years. But you also mentioned, Dori, projects. So think about adding in projects. So what's your average project size? Is it a $10,000 project, a $20,000 project? Just add that up per client. What about setup fees? What about any credit card fees? What about shipping fees? Whatever additional fees go into that. Now that $108,000 has climbed exponentially. So please make some time to think about what your lifetime value of a client is and communicate that to both teams, sales and service. Okay, so because that's going to help to give buy-in and start the conversation. So think about what's the impact to your MSP. You could increase your close ratio now by 2 to 3x. Dori had an amazing close ratio at her former MSP of 70%. Wow, that's amazing. That's huge. Let's think about how we can do that and be intentional with our actions. So let's talk about now, Dori, some of those silos and really what do we see in our community? And I'm curious to hear from all of you. Get your fingers going. We'd love to see you in the chat. Do you agree?
Yeah, so what I really saw in a lot of the MSPs that I was with and that I work with today are these silos between sales, service, account management, purchasing or billing.
Right.
And even if you are an owner-led sales, sometimes there can be still silos between sales and service, right? Because you're really focused on bringing in new business, but service is focused on the integration. And so there can be a lot of silos on that. And account management is very important. We're going to talk a little bit more about that when we talk about our dream team and how did we actually get to that big close ratio number.
This is such a huge impact. I love the visual of this slide, Dori, of how you really can visually see that truthfully, each department is equally critical to the success of an IT business, but we departmentalize and compartmentalize. So let's talk about some of these causes, and let's see if we can have a little therapy session with everybody today. And let's see if we can just kind of get our mindset and gears turning.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is kind of sometimes a little bit of a tough conversation to have between sales and service because there's a lot of competing priorities. Salespeople, I consider are yes people, right? That's what their goal is, to find solutions. So if a client asks them if they can do something, their goal is to be able to say yes. They're going to look for a solution because they have to close business. They need to bring in sales, and they're not going to do that by saying no, which is great. I have all the respect in the world. In fact, prior to joining the MSP space, I was a sales leader, so I understand what those challenges are very intimately. But on the other hand, the technical side tend to be no people. No offense to techs that are out there today
No offense.
at all, but the fact of the matter is they're trained to be looking for issues. They're trained to be troubleshooting. They're trained to be not to have as little risk as possible because their success depends on smooth integration. So they want to know in advance that
Right.
that everything, all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and they can make this work. So those two competing priorities can tend to cause clashes between sales and services. But if you have a process that doesn't incorporate the technical team, the clashing can get even worse. But what if you have a process where sales relies on technical, and technical is happy to have sales to help them move deals forward? That's where you really start seeing the success.
That's exactly where we needed to be when we realized that we were losing clients and losing client respect because we were not communicating with each other. We were not relying on each other for success. And one of the things that was lacking was this, and many of IT companies that I coach are lacking a focus on emotionally intelligent communication and communication training. What does that look like? We all know what training looks like for A+ certifications and Azure training and all of that. But what in the world does soft skills training look like? So I'm going to give you some content today to bring back to your staff meetings so that you can start that foundation of communication training and really understanding emotionally, how do I need to respond so that we have a productive conversation? And how do we demonstrate respect for each other? I'm going to talk about that in a few slides. And then there was that lack of trust. Sales is afraid of, bringing technical in because maybe there's an awkward situation. Maybe there's some geek speak going on. There's a lack of preparation.
Or they might just say, no, we can't do something that sales thinks that we can do.
Oh, yes, yes.
Those things all have to be worked out, and they are problems that can be solved. I think that's the most important piece, is we can solve those problems. We just need to know where to put our energy.
100%. That's exactly right. And so think about what else in your MSP is causing those silos. How do you break them down? I'm pretty confident that they're within these 4 are the main ones. So let's now talk about the collaboration, Dori. Let's really kick into the meat here and what's going to bridge that gap. We're going to focus on these 2 we mentioned earlier in our agenda. What's going to bridge that gap between sales and service? We're going to talk about intentional processes, and Dori's going to walk you through some ideas, and then I'm going to talk to you about creating client-ready teams. So let's kick it in, Dori. Intentional processes.
Yep, absolutely. So in my consulting company, Call to Action, my tagline is, it's not just what you do, but how you do it. So I work with a lot of companies who sometimes have SOPs that are, hidden. They'll be like, oh yeah, we have an SOP on that someplace, meaning they're not really using it, or it doesn't really address the how. So we need to talk about, how do you get there? And I think if you look at this slide now, if we take these silos and work them into a workflow instead of a silo that moves nicely from sales to service. So from sales to service to the team to the client, that's where we really find unified success. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. How I did it with my company is, the first thing I needed to do is start what I call the dream team. And that is sort of a terminology that we used about ourselves, actually, throughout the course of my tenure with the organization, because we took a lot of pride in what we were doing. So one of the key areas, of course, is the contribution of the owner or the CEO or the service leader, depending on, the size of your organization. I also brought in a technical leader. For me, this was a BCIO, could be a service manager, whatever your particular staffing model looks like. But I had a technical leader that was a very strong technically and very strong at client facing, though he would definitely benefit for the type of coaching that Lisa does. So even though he was, really mature in that way, there were a lot of times where he wasn't quite sure how to respond to client situations, and would definitely benefit from the EQ type of coaching. Of course, we had a sales rep, because we wanted to be able to bring, focus to new business. Now, again, for some of you, you may be owner-led sales. But I do encourage people, if they're able to bring on a sales rep that will help them to really focus to that new business development. And last but not least, we had a fantastic account manager. Now, a lot of people may be asking, why would an account manager matter when we're talking about new business development? And I can tell you that from a client's perspective, when you're trying to talk to them about partnering with their business, what they're thinking is 5 steps ahead of, what will this actually look like if we're partnered? So they want to know, how is their account going to be managed? And that's something that we incorporated into our new business presentations. So this was our dream team, and we were able to really set the tone honestly, for the whole company, with a lot of the processes that we built using this dream team.
I love this slide, Dori. I'll just say one thing before we move on to some templates that you're going to talk about. But for my MSP, this was a critical first step in creating that collaboration that we needed. So I encourage everybody, take a screenshot of this and then implement this for your IT business. Who needs to be on your dream team? So think about that first. So use this outline, this framework, and then create it for you. We're here to help you decide that as well. That's what Dori and I are here for, to help you determine that, put together that team, and how do they collaborate?
Absolutely. And even in the case of a smaller MSP where an owner may be wearing a couple of those different hats, that's not unusual. There still needs to be a specific process for each of those roles, even if they may be only held by 1 or 2 people. The next thing we did, once we had the dream team in place, and I say this is a very important aspect, is I really utilized the expertise of the people on the dream team to help build these key templates or documents that we used. And the reason why having these templates available is so important is because you don't want to be in a situation where you have this great prospect, and now you're delaying on moving them through the process because you're creating some of these items. Also, these items help to keep that collaboration going before the team. So you have it in writing, you're doing your training, it's repeatable. Each sales opportunity you have is repeating this process. So the key templates that we used, we had a proposal and a PowerPoint template, which really had every service that we offered. And then we would customize it to that particular opportunity. We had a technical questionnaire, which the technical leader was able to use to make sure that he was doing he or she was using to make sure they were doing their due diligence and trying to understand the needs of the client. So it was a very systematic approach. We had a scope of work template, or a SOW, that we used. And how we used the SOW is that the technical leader would give us the content. They would make the recommendations of what the client needed in terms of maybe onboarding. For example, we had a client that we were onboarding that had they had a disaster recovery for their key servers, but we didn't know until technical dug into it that they also had a second failover site. This was a venture capital firm, so security and compliance and business continuity were extremely important. Well, if we had just taken a high-level look and hadn't really gone through the due diligence with the technical questionnaire, we may have stumbled on that during onboarding. So that's why it's really key to have that. The SOW, as I mentioned, the technical leader would put the content and recommendations into the SOW template, which would then go to sales, who would turn it into a client-facing document. So very process, right? And then we had a really, really strong quarterly business review template that we continue to improve upon over the years. And those things always have to be sort of a live document where you continue, because the industry is so dynamic. But how we used that QBR template in the new business prospecting is we would take a couple of the key slides to demonstrate to the prospect, this is what it will look like after the partnership. This is what you can count on from us. And at some point, we would introduce our client success manager. And then last but not least would be the agenda template. And the reason why it seems so simple, a lot of people don't use agendas, or a lot of people just say it's just a verbal agenda, or I have an agenda, but I don't share it with the client. It's really important to force your team to be ready for that meeting and to provide to the client so that they're ready for that meeting. Maybe you need to bring in stakeholders, or they need to bring in a stakeholder. If we're going to go over a technical questionnaire in your agenda and you're working with the CFO, they may think, I better bring somebody, who has a little bit more knowledge of our technical team or technical background to that meeting. So don't skip on the agenda. It's a really important part of the process.
What a great way to demonstrate your attention to detail, your attention to preparation. It demonstrates respect for the client, for the prospect. I mean, all of these templates it's all about, it's a workflow and communication, but also perception management. So it's really critical to appear. I mean, it's important to have all of these documents so that you stay in line and in order and you have expectations, but that perception management is invaluable as well. So I love all of these templates.
It's a differentiator, Lisa.
Yeah.
It's a real differentiator. And in my travels and working with MSPs and going to conferences and things like that, I always hear questions about how do we differentiate ourselves? And I'm telling you that what you just said is being respectful of the client's time and really being well organized. That is a huge differentiator, believe me, in a sales process.
Oh, huge.
But, then it comes to, okay, how do we put these things together and actually build a workflow? With my coaching clients, if they don't have a workflow to start from, what I really suggest that they do is look at the process and start asking questions about how information flows through the organization. So for a sales process, it may include some of the questions you see on the screen. You know, who's leading the sales opportunity? Is it the owner? Is it the salesperson? Is it the executive? You know, you can have different processes there.
Right.
What's the communication? Are you going to have, you know, meetings before to prepare, you know, things like that? What's the cadence? You know, who's the, at what point is technical introduced? You may not want to bring them in right away for the first meeting. You may want to qualify and figure out where they're at and what the needs are. So on and so forth, just going through each step and asking yourself all those questions. And this process can be used whether you're looking at your project process, where you're looking at your new business process, whatever those processes are, you can kind of use this format to help you be able to build your own great workflows.
I think that's the best part of this workflow that you created, Dori, is that it can be adapted to the sales process, to the onboarding process, to the service delivery process, to a project management process. So I think having something like this outlined and identified, I love that you simplified this and you created it in a way that it's digestible for all of us MSP owners, and it's something that we just have to sit down and do it. I mean, we just have to put those tickets aside, put that quote aside, and just sit down and do it.
Yeah, well, sometimes people feel so overwhelmed. You know, I
Mhm.
work with customers that are like, they're so brilliant and they know kind of what to do, but not really how to do it. And so that just stalls them out. They have analysis to paralysis. So
Right.
hopefully this will help.
See why you need us? So let's now shift over and talk about building client-ready teams. So this is you've got your processes, you've got the foundation. Now let's talk about how do you communicate it? That's the number one question I get is, what do I say? How do I say it? So here's what our team looked like originally. I want you guys to think about, if you're watching the replay, did your team look like this? I'm not doing this. This is not a statement of work I created. This is not going to happen. But you have to because I promised the client, that's what we looked like. And that's what was getting us fired. This is what we look like now. So this is an image, an actual image of my office, my IT office. The woman in the picture is my now director of operations, but she's also my service manager. And the gentleman is my director of sales. There was a point where they were having a very hard time collaborating. They took ownership for their departments and passionate for sure, but getting to the point where we have an awareness. So I want everybody to write down that word awareness, that each person's role is equally important to the success, to client success, to my secure future tech team success. So this is what they look like now. They're collaborating. They're asking questions. They don't always agree, and I don't expect them to, because I don't want yes people. I want people who are thinking and processing. So verbally, this is where we started. So if you're wondering where to start, this is where you start. Your tone, your clarity, and consistency. So with the tone, there's a saying that it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. So how we say something and how we ask a question, such as if sales is asking service, why isn't that ticket closed yet? When is that project going to get scheduled? You can ask it kindly or in an urgent tone. Tell me when that project is going to get scheduled. I want to call the client back and let her know. Or you can be edgy and say, why isn't this project done yet? What's going on? So the tone of voice, the words we say impact that collaboration. The next one is clarity. Now, Dori, with all of her framework, gave so much clarity on the documents and templates needed, on the workflow needed. We now need to say it. We now need to communicate it. So what are you specifically looking for? What are you asking of each other? And most importantly, what does the client need? So not being vague and just saying, get the ticket closed, get it done, go install that firewall. Actually have conversations of what the client network looks like, what is needed, what did you promise the client, why did you promise that to the client, really having ongoing discussions and communication. So this is where all of us need to kind of take some ownership with what we're saying, how we're saying it. And we sat down and host regular meetings to do this because the most important piece is this consistency. You don't just apply this to a one and done meeting. Every single day, we have to be conscious and mindful of our tone of voice, of the questions that we're asking, of the needs, of what we're feeling. That's where emotional intelligence comes in, where we talk about how do we need to respond, and then empathetically, so that we feel like we're being validated, heard, and really giving the listener, that validation, because then that begets an amazing client experience. So and I call these in my book, they're called credibility builders. That's that verbal communication that builds people up and it decreases miscommunication. Think about all of that communication that's been missed or that could have been fixed or mitigated because you actually asked questions and didn't just assume somebody was in our head, but we took the time to communicate it. The team feels valued and heard. Both teams understand the mission of the MSP as a whole, not just each department. It improves team culture and it provides that higher level of service to your clients. Now, we've got the verbal side communicated. Let's focus on the nonverbal side. So picture this on this picture here, this cloud migration. I ask you, do you ever feel that everybody is distracted around you? You're delivering, you prepared a presentation. How does it make you feel? How does this make you feel? Right? So if you're in a prospect meeting, or you're in a client meeting, or you're in an employee staff meeting, and people are looking away, they're looking down at their phones, they're distracted. It doesn't provide a collaborative environment. We had a service manager that used to roll their eyes.
Oh boy.
Oh yes, we sure did. That was an interesting conversation, but we had to have it. We had to have that conversation of awareness. And then starting with that and then saying how it's making me feel and how it must be making others feel. So looking at that, we're all hybrid now. We're on this Zoom call. Dori's in, Massachusetts. I'm here in Rhode Island, and, collaboration. Thank God for technology. But we have to also think about how we're presenting ourselves, what our nonverbal messaging is saying, and having conversations with our team about it. It's really critical. We want that team to feel valued and heard through positive actions. We want them to being present, really demonstrates that involvement in the process. We want to minimize as many misunderstandings as we can. We just had, we have an intern working with us right now, and he gave us the greatest compliment, and it was perfect timing. And he said just the other day, every morning, we have a team staff morning, 9 a.m. Some of them are just 15 minutes. Every Friday, it's a full hour. Everybody gets a chance to share a highlight or talk about a topic. The intern said, wow, I'm amazed at how collaborative your team is, and I'm so excited to learn from them. I swear to God, I didn't prompt it. I did not prompt it. They said, you're working together and I was like, boy, I said, thank you. We are working on it every day. Every single day we work on this because it really improves that team culture. And remember, We're trying to bridge those gaps between sales and service so that we provide that level of customer service to our clients that they expect and that differentiates us. Because our entire team are trusted advisors. They're not ticket closers. They're not sales reps. They're not just account managers. Everybody here has a hand in advising our clients on how to grow.
And I would add as well, Lisa, that in my experience working with services leaders, a lot of times they not only I know would they benefit from the type of coaching that you do, they want that coaching. They have questions of how to handle difficult situations, how to communicate. This is something that they really enjoy this type of feedback from. So I know it's beneficial, but I also know that they really appreciate having that type of coaching as well.
Oh, absolutely. The service managers that I've worked with have absolutely asked me so many questions on how do you handle employee conversations and difficult conversations of having to get back to a client when there's a delay on an order. So let's make your teams client ready. This is a great checklist of where you need to go. So take a screenshot of this. I think some of the most important ones are to share your goals. Really make the entire team understand where you're going so you're all rowing in the same direction. Making sure that you provide that ongoing client success. Just like you monitor data backups, you've got to monitor the temperature of your team and your communication skills. Having regularly scheduled staff meetings will absolutely help you with that. And then you take Dori's templates of agendas and all of the different statements of work and all the different workflows to help run those meetings. And don't forget, asking questions. If you're looking for a couple of questions, I'm seeding a couple for you. What does empathy look like? And what are examples of setting great client expectations? What are some examples on your team of how you can set expectations? Maybe you have some ideas of what you're doing great, and maybe some new ideas will come up. So with that said, Dori and I promised you an amazing program. Dori and I are partnering together. You get 2 amazing coaches. We are calling this Bridging the Gap Between Sales and Service and Building That Foundation for Success. We have a program for you to get started with us. Let us work with you. Let us help you start with that foundation to your success, your successful collaboration. We're going to start with this 1-hour discovery call. You'll work with us and we'll really uncover your pain points. What are you looking for? Then we're going to split up and you'll get 1.5 hours with Dori, 1.5 hours with me of expert. You get our brains, you get our expert time. We'll provide handouts. We're going to work with you on, I'll work with you on your soft skills and really honing in on the critical ones needed to bridge that gap. And with Dori, you'll be working on one of the frameworks to success. We have handouts and the price is $19.97. So it's an amazing price point. It's an amazing opportunity to get started with the 2 of us and really helping you to bridge that gap between sales and service. Any other comments you want to add to that, Dori?
Yeah, I'm just really excited to have the opportunity. I think I hope people will take advantage of this because it is a great entry point for being able to help them really resolve a lot of the challenges that we know from being in the industry for so many years are out there.
Absolutely. So that QR code goes right to my calendar. Book some time. Let's get started and let's have that conversation. Anybody have any questions? I'm noticing the time. We are right at time. Anybody have any questions before we sign off today? If there's anything we can answer. All right. Well, I thank everybody for your time. I am excited that we were able to participate today in, this collaborative conversation of sales and service. It's something that we all struggle with, but we all know our lifetime value of our clients is really at the forefront of our brain here. And how do you create that level of client experience? It's with a framework and then that human element. So let's talk and let's work together. Click on that QR code now, book some time. Even if you want to just have a conversation with us before you get started, let us know.
Thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed this, and I really hope that Lisa and I were able to give you some great impacting type of advice going forward, and we'd love to have an opportunity to work with you.
Excellent. Have a great Wednesday.
Bye, everyone.